Hey guys.
Hi.
So we just landed at Bucharest International Airport. It's a 3-hour flight from London Luton.
Wizz Air
By
flies, I
Wizz Air.
think, probably every day.
Yeah, and it was a comfortable flight thanks to the flight being half full, so we were able to sleep on all 3 hours.
Yes.
The airport itself, it's very high tech, sophisticated, nice and clean. They had thermal imaging cameras, which also have facial recognition software. So while we were walking in, we could see our faces captured and recognized on the system, names coming up as well as our body temperatures.
Temperature, yes, that was very smart.
Very high tech.
My only unpleasant experience in this airport was the immigration bit. I know that they are required to ask questions and they need to verify that we will not be overstaying our welcome, but
They were not very friendly. Otherwise, we are waiting for our taxi
Yes.
just outside the airport. We pre-booked our taxis because we were told and we read that it's difficult to get a taxi, especially if we land late at night, which won't overcharge you. So we got ours pre-booked and we are waiting for the taxi to come out.
and next stop is our hotel. Alright guys, we have arrived at the hotel. It looks gorgeous. It is amazing. The decor is classical. Should be a good one. But we had a little hitch on the way. Remember I told you that we had pre-booked a taxi, which unfortunately never arrived. We waited at the airport for an hour. Finally, we had to call a normal taxi. Now there are some taxi hailing stands out in the airport. In a few blogs I had read that they are not really very reliable, but we had to try luck. It was 11:30 already, and we got a voucher for a taxi, and there was a very friendly lady at the airport who led us into the taxi lane and showed us the taxi that we were supposed to take, in fact. So Vikram is checking us in at the hotel now, and hopefully we'll be in our room soon, but we are famished and we really need to have something to eat now. But first, wash my hands.
So we just checked in and it's nearly 12 o'clock here, 12 midnight. Unfortunately, the kitchen is closed and the room service closes at 10 o'clock. And this is all due to the coronavirus scare. So we are trying to go out and see whether we can grab some food outside.
If we can.
If we can.
We didn't have a lot of options as far as our dinner is concerned. Even though we are staying in a central, very swanky part of the city, most of the upscale hotels are in the vicinity. We could see Ramada, and right across is the Novotel, which is where we are now. Thankfully, the bar is still open. The kitchen unfortunately is closed, but we did manage to find a lavish meal of bread and olives with a little bit of oil and of course local Romanian wine. Not too bad, not what I was expecting for dinner when I set off from London this evening, but back to basics, guys. Today we are out on a long excursion to Transylvania. This was also pre-booked, and the day before our departure they got in touch with us and they let us know that a few of the major attractions will be closed for the coronavirus scare. But of course that did not deter us. I had in fact hired a private car with a guide. It was the time of social distancing getting more and more popular, so I figured that I
Might as well
not share.
Well, it's not a bad
space with
idea
other
because we
passengers.
had an early start this morning and you caught up on some of your snooze, right?
Yes. So our guide told us a lot of history about Romania and Bucharest and Transylvania. I could hear communism, Romans, and what other words floating around.
Dacians.
But you know what?
We started with the war
I was
between.
out.
We started with the war between the Romans and the Dacians, and then continued on to the communist East Bloc and the revolution which happened in 1989. So we covered a lot of ground.
Yes. So Vikram had a full-on history lesson while I caught up on my snooze, but I'm now re-energized now to carry on with the sightseeing. So we are in a first destination. This is called Sinai Monastery. This also has got a bit of history. I believe it has something to do with Moses and the 10 Commandments. Anyway, this is an Orthodox Christian country. There's a mountain in Egypt called Sinai Mountain, and
Yep.
Moses got his enlightenment in that mountain.
That's correct.
This monastery is inspired by
Nah,
what was she saying?
No, so basically, if Orthodox monasteries, the older ones, they normally have a painting of the Judgment Day in front of them. That's what she was showing us,
Okay.
and that showed if you pass judgment, you land up in hell. You land up in heaven, and if you don't pass judgment, you end up in hell. And also, it had a sculpture of Moses and his brother.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. So this is up in the mountains. It's quite chilly up here, but thankfully the sun has decided to show itself. It's we feel quite pleasant too, and it's a very beautiful, picturesque kind of place. And if you have watched our video on Georgia, I think it's very similar to the monasteries we visited in Georgia,
That's right.
isn't it? Maybe slightly more color here than there, but
Yeah. It feels exactly the same.
okay. All right, let's carry on.
So we reached the royal palaces at the top of the mountain. There are two palaces here, very interesting. The main palace, which contains 160 different rooms, each with a different theme of a different country. And the rationale was the prince or the king wanted to bring the world into his palace. And then he adopted his nephew, who turned out to be too loud and too noisy. And therefore, what do you do when you have a family member who is too loud and noisy? Of course, you just build a separate palace for that family member.
When are you going to build a palace for me?
You can stay in the doghouse, honey.
I'll build one for myself, don't worry.
Okay. And an interesting trivia about the second palace is Queen Margaret. What was the name? Queen Anne or Queen Margaret?
Queen Mary?
Queen Mary? Not Mary.
There's some queen
Some
who
queen.
came from the British royal family.
So one of the queens who was half and half. So who came from the British royal family.
We are so bad
She
at
was she was very fond of this place and of this palace, and therefore when she died, her heart was actually buried in the bedroom of the palace.
But there are no haunting stories around.
But we
as-
don't know that.
We don't know that yet. This doesn't look like a haunted place. It's so peaceful and
It's
nice
beautiful.
with rolling hills. Not hills. It rather looks mountainous. In fact, Vikram said this reminds him of Switzerland. To me, this reminds me of Himachal Pradesh. The guide says that the interiors of the palace is stunning, and that all her clients have remarked how utterly gorgeous it is, and it's the most beautiful palace they have ever seen. So we really are missing out because of this COVID-19. You see why this reminds me of Himachal? This gurgling of stream, the pines, the breeze. I've never been to Kashmir. Where are we?
So we have reached the village of Bran. And wow, look at the dog behind us.
Oh goodness!
Such a darling.
I know there are many stray dogs in Romania, but this one has a collar on.
Okay, so maybe all stray dogs might have a collar on. We don't know.
Yes, maybe they account
Yeah.
for them.
So we have reached the village of Bran, and this is where we have come to visit the
we have
Bran.
got a new friend, Vikram.
Oh, you've got a new friend?
Following us.
Oh, okay.
May want some food. I have nothing better.
You can get some food. He's gorgeous, isn't
He really is.
he? Hey, bro.
But I know someone who won't be happy.
He's like his long lost cousin.
হ্যাঁ
His long lost cousin.
চুইকে দেখাতে হবে হ্যাঁ twice removed and twice in size.
So we are sitting just outside of the Bran Castle, which is the home of, you guessed it, Count Dracula. Apparently, there is no such figure in history. It was all a figment of Mr. Bram Stoker's imagination. But he took inspiration from a historical figure called Vlad the Impaler, who was an extremely cruel, ambitious ruler, and was literally, from the stories that our guide was telling us, he impaled people right through the anus up to the head, and indiscriminately, his friends, family, enemies, everyone. The character was based on Vlad the Impaler, and the name was based on his father, Vlad the Dracul, I think.
Yeah,
From the
someone's
house
name
of
was
Dracul.
Dracul.
So basically, Dracul in Romanian means dragon. So they belong to the house of dragons, and from that the name came down to Count Dracula.
Yeah, but there's no blood-sucking half-bat.
There's no centuries-old person. There is no blood sucking involved. There's a lot of bloodthirst and bloodletting involved.
Yeah.
Because Vlad was very cruel apparently, and he had very cruel means of putting people to death and torturing them. But there was literally nothing else.
Well, that's interesting. And unfortunately, the castle is also closed now because of the same, you guessed it right, coronavirus scare. We have to make do with whatever we can see from outside. Alright guys, so that's the Bran Castle. Bran Castle, not Bram Castle. I know the two names sound very familiar, but it's just a coincidence. And even though the name of this castle is not mentioned in the book, but it does look eerily similar to whatever Mr. Stoker had described in his books.
I'm sure he drew the picture of the castle based on this one.
Yes, and the guide said that back in the days it looked spooky because this was a solitary construction in a mountainous area.
You can actually visualize Dracula climbing down the steep side.
Yeah. Alright, so this is our next stop, the second most visited city in Romania, which is Brașov. A very, very, very pretty place, and we are right now at the central square. This was a medieval citadel, I believe. Vikram,
Yep.
I think, do you want to shed more light on its history?
Yes, so it was set up by the Saxons, who were invited by the king of Romania because the king felt that people here did not have military training, so he invited the Saxons over, and what they did was establish this beautiful citadel at the base of the mountain. So this used to be the courtroom, and behind me you can see the fountain, which used to be the punishment block or the executioner's block. So yeah, pretty gruesome.
Yeah. So we're going to have a walk around the city now and then grab something to eat.
On the advice of our guide, we just stepped in for a quick bite at a traditional restaurant here in Brașov. The name is La Coin. We started off with some fiery local brandy, and what we have is a lavish vegetarian spread. We have the eggplant salad, we have got the baked polenta, and we have got the zakuska, which is essentially, it looks like tomatoes and beans slow cooked.
Alright, moment of truth. How did you like it? Let's be honest, if you do not eat meat, your choices are limited.
It is limited. I think if you're traveling across Eastern Europe and you don't eat meat, your choices are limited anyway.
Yes, there were only 3 items in the menu that we could have.
We had all 3.
We had all 3. I found the eggplant salad
Too creamy.
too salty.
Too salty.
Too salty. The polenta baked was too creamy. The other one was...
The other one was okay. The beans, the cauldron cooked beans, that was actually okay. But we obviously had a version of that in Georgia as well, if you remember.
Yes, I'm not very amazed by the food.
No, every time I travel and I look for vegetarian options, I'm amazed by the variety of options that we have in India across all cuisines.
Yes, we can't compare. I guess India just grows more vegetables than many of these countries.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's just walk down the road and see if we can buy any souvenirs. You remember the doll for my mum and the wall plate for your dad.
Oh no, not again.
Okay, so we have returned to our hotel now. It was a good idea to go for a private vehicle because I could catch up on my snooze.
You crashed for major part of the journey. You missed out most of this landscapes and sceneries. It's a stunning landscape, I have to say.
No, I did open my eyes at some points. I did notice. We went through a mountainous area. There were loads of valleys, and surprisingly, we saw snow too. I mean,
we saw snow-capped mountains and snow on the ground.
Yes.
But it wasn't very cold. It was around 5 or 6 degrees during the daytime.
Yes, that's right. Now, I need a nap. I'm sorry. I'm really exhausted. I need to sleep for an hour and a bit, and then we have dinner reservation tonight.
Batra restaurant. I have to thank TripAdvisor for this recommendation. We really enjoyed the food and the wine and the service. There were 3 couples dining at the restaurant, so it was a bit empty.
It was very quiet for a Saturday night.
Yes, it was. But I would say that the quality of food was really good. All the plates were freshly cooked, made from good ingredients, and even the dessert. We enjoyed the dessert so much. We finished it all despite being full.
Do you remember the name of the dessert? It starts with P. It's a local delicacy. It's a Romanian version of
Papanasi.
donut. Papanasi, yes.
Papanasi.
Definitely recommended. So we have a few more hours left in Bucharest, and we decided to use this time in walking around the city and see the major landmarks. Ideally, I would have loved to go for the free Bucharest walking tour. There is one which, as the name explains, is free of charge, and it lasts for about 3 hours, I believe. But guess what? They're not doing it anymore because of, you guessed it right, coronavirus. I know I sound like a broken record here, don't I? But because of the virus scare, most of the establishments are closed. The sightseeing places definitely are closed. It looks like a ghost town, even though Romania is not really under lockdown. They have very few cases here till now. Touch wood. I really hope it stays this way. Anyway, since we are here, we decided to go on a self-guided tour. And Google has plenty of resources. I'll share some of the places and websites that I consulted in the video description below. What you see behind us is the Palace of Parliament. It's a massive structure. It's the second largest administrative building in the world, and it was built during the communist era because the then ruler decided that this is a good way to show off his power. Is that right?
Show off the power of communism.
Communism. It's very, very cold here. We have got our gloves on and we are still freezing, and we have got tongue tied too. So please excuse if we sound a bit weird. We are taking a stroll down the roads of Old Town now. I'm sure you can appreciate that almost all establishments are closed. It's very sad and disheartening. I can get the point, but I'm also worried that so many people will lose their income. I know that probably is not priority now. We have to focus on health. And I also want to speak a few words about traveling during coronavirus season. I know my family is not impressed with my decision to go ahead with this holiday, but I did do my homework. I had checked FCO guidelines and recommendations by NHS, and also checked the official statement from the government of Romania before boarding the flight. I've mentioned this before. I do maintain very strict hygiene, especially when I'm traveling. I have tricks like taking a thorough shower and shampooing my hair after every flight, and I frequently hand wash anyway. That's everyday exercise for me, nothing different, but Vikram is also doing the same. And I know that advising to wash hands may seem like a very frivolous thing to do, and may seem like healthcare experts are trivializing the issue. Believe me when I say that it is the one thing that has been time and again proven to really work. Also, we are both really impressed with whatever Romanian government has done for prevention of the infection. I told you about the thermal cameras at the airport. They have hand sanitizers everywhere. You may have noticed. Social distancing thankfully has been easy because there are so few people out in the streets. Even in our flight, we could easily maintain 2 meters distance from all passengers because it was only about half full, if at all. And the stewards also announced in the flight that they have been strongly advised to maintain safe distance from all passengers, which they rigorously maintained. So yes, people are doing their bit.
I know this is a challenging phase for most of us. We've got parents, aged people in our family, loved ones that we are afraid of losing. But I think all of this shall pass soon. All we need to do is make sure that we remain calm. We don't give in to the panic. We don't buy into all that stuff which is floating around on the WhatsApp and on Facebook. And just be peaceful, guys. Just think about other people.